Next stop, Indianapolis. The offseason, folks, is over. We are thrilled to say that later today, Monday, the Podcast Daily crew will be heading over for Big Ten Media Days. Ohio State kicks things off on Tuesday along with Tony Petitti. I don't even know who else is on Tuesday because it doesn't matter. That's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I'm Austin Ward, and I'm pumped. But let me ask you first, Bill. Now that we're saying the offseason is over, what has been your favorite offseason storyline for the Buckeyes?
My favorite my favorite offseason storyline was the lack of offseason storylines. Just like us scrambling to figure out things to talk about because nothing all that interesting was happening. I know there was recruiting stuff, obviously, but as it pertains to the team, like not a whole lot going on. Like the biggest thing that I think got people in a tizzy was like JT Tuimoloau not being in the video game, which is like if that's the thing that people are upset about during an off season, I think you're doing okay.
Yeah, I was actually worried a little bit that we were going to jinx things once we talked about like this being the final weekend of the then off season and what could happen, and nothing did. So kudos to us. We apparently have zero power over the cosmos, which is not a surprise, but it's also good to have it reaffirmed. But to me, like the story of the offseason was the offensive coordinator stuff, the Bill O'Brien stuff, the switch to Chip Kelly stuff, and now how Chip Kelly's influence it really is felt for Ohio State as they start practice, 10 days from now. So that's the thing to me. That's like the offensive coordinators, the role of Ryan Day, the way that Chip Kelly is influencing not just Ryan Day, but also Brian Hartline and Justin Fry and now Carlos Lockman. Like to me, that's the story.
I didn't know we could go back that far.
Yeah, that's the winter, bud. That doesn't count. That's not a summer storyline. You can?
That's true. So we wanted you wanted summer storyline?
I was making a joke about how there really weren't any.
No, there weren't any.
Did you get it? Yeah. You didn't get it. That's all right. I do think that there's something to like Ryan Day's summer. We've talked about like the media appearances. He had one with us at Roosters. He was on Morning Juice. He did the surprise like midsummer update where he dropped the Caleb Downs running back news for no reason whatsoever. I think maybe just to amuse himself and give us something to talk about. But we've mentioned this several times before, just the way that he's conducted himself in this these summer months has been very different than others, in my opinion, and my time covering him. We'll see how much of that spills over to Tuesday and his, first press conferences of the season or of training camp, and how he responds to what I think will be a lot of questions about NIL and all-star teams. And we'll get into that. We're going to make some prop bets about what we're expecting to hear on Tuesday. But Ryan Day's summer, I think, just be it because there's not a lot of others.
Ryan Day's summer was interesting. I am very curious though, Austin, like how much spillover there will be, right? I don't want to necessarily, jump ahead as you said, but he had a different demeanor about him this summer. Clearly was more accessible this spring and summer, just kind of more out there. I think trying to find ways to embrace that CEO kind of mentality now that his role is a little bit of flux, as with everything that's on his plate right now. I think the same guy will be in Indianapolis. I don't really have any reason to believe that he won't be the same guy in Indianapolis, but it's like a different venue, different people, different line of questioning. There's going to be a lot of stuff about, I'm going to imagine, like the pressure that Ohio State feels or doesn't feel this season, given how talented it is. So I remain curious how much he will handle all of that. But there's no doubt that maybe the most interesting thing, or the thing that was most different this offseason for Ohio State, was the way that Ryan Day kind of went about his business.
I mean, he's heading into year number 6 of Big Ten Media Days as the head coach. And he's always been pretty laid back in that setting. He's always been pretty open, to be honest. I mean, more so than he is in the press conferences at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, in my opinion, as far as his willingness to open up and talk about things. I can distinctly remember him prior to the 2019 season, or was it 2021 season? Whichever one. He's talking about just the changes of college football and how different things were going to be and how he didn't really know where the game was going. And that's one of those moments at the Big Ten Media Days where I'm like, oh, that's what I want out of a coach in that setting, where they're just being, all cards on the table. And he's been that way this offseason for sure. I do think it will be interesting to see how different that is once we get past that first maybe 4 days of August where they have the open practices scheduled, and we won't really get to talk to Ryan Day at that point or any of the players much, moving forward from there. And so I do think that there is at least a potential for this shift in personality to run into a hard stop at the first week of August.
Well, maybe it won't. I mean, we don't have the media schedule yet for August, but he's already.
We don't have the schedule for Big Ten media.
Well, we don't have that either. And apparently, the Big Ten Sports Information Department, their communications directors have lost the ability to send out emails. I sent them one directly and was like, "Hey, I didn't get anything about credentials." And they're like, "Yeah, we're having some IT outages and we're shifting over to some other format." I'm like, "Well, I guess that's happening everywhere." It was a harbinger of things to come for airlines across the country, I guess. But
they'll
it'd be
send
cool
their
if we
Raven
did.
with the schedule. Just look out for the bird. They'll drop off the message at your house.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll show up at some time on Tuesday and they'll start talking. But
this wouldn't have happened under Kevin Warren. That's all I know.
Yeah, nothing would have happened. I guess we should take it one thing at a time. We don't know what the schedule is for Tuesday, but we also don't know what the media schedule is for Ohio State in August, other than, as I was saying, Ryan Day opened up twice as many of them as he did last year to fans to come in. We do tend to get a pretty decent amount of interview days throughout August, but that could be another barometer of laid-back CEO Ryan Day if he goes from those 4 days and sprinkles in a couple other open viewing periods throughout the month. It wouldn't shock me. I also won't be shocked if he doesn't. So I guess I'm going to have no expectations for it, but that could be another sign that he of the different approach that he's taking. Hopefully we find out in Indianapolis from Jerry and Mike and everybody else what that's going to look like for us, because that would be cool if we could start planning what August is going to look like from a coverage perspective and how much we'll be in the Woody.
I do think sometimes we as media members maybe make too much of how teams choose to handle that kind of stuff, and or read too much into it as a reflection of the team's mentality. So I will try not to do that with that example specifically, but I am interested sort of in Ohio State's mentality, especially for the 3 players in Ryan Day going to Indy, now facing people or getting questions from people who just aren't local media, who will ask a lot more big picture, national championship or bust kind of questions. Whether or not those the answers to that change at all, whether or not the way that Ohio State I think has chosen to present itself relative to that question so far in this offseason changes at all. I've noticed Will Howard a couple times. He did it at the Manning Passing Academy, and he did it this past weekend. There was a Foundation NIL thing, and I was watching the news. He did an interview with Channel 10, I think it was, and both times he said we're tired of hearing how good we are. We want to I guess earn the moniker of a team that's working hard to win a championship, not a team that is just getting by on pure talent alone. And he's kind of the only one I've heard say that, but I do wonder how much that permeates their team, how much even Ryan Day might kind of push back on some of that talent talk and embrace the idea of actually having to grind for a championship. So there's an opportunity here for Ohio State, I think, to kind of change the tune of the offseason, I think, as it pertains to the national conversation about them. And I do find myself wondering if they might actually embrace that opportunity.
Yeah, I would hope so. I mean, that is what this week is about. I think it's interesting because the guys that are going to be in Indianapolis are veterans, they're experienced, they have a very good sense of how to handle the media, but they are going to get a lot of those big picture questions. Those, are you guys going to win a national championship? And if you don't, do you suck type of things? Those questions are going to come. And, guys like Emeka Ibuka and Denzel Burke, they are not going to bite their tongue. That's what we know from those guys. So I think, I was going to actually bring up, Bill, what you just said about Will Howard, and the thought process really has to be the Buckeyes haven't won anything. They haven't had a practice yet. So to continue talking about how good they are is sort of irrelevant, because we have no idea how good they are. We have a pretty good idea that they can be good, but we've seen great talent fall flat before. And so that type of expectation, I think it's good that it's out in front of you. It's good that people expect that of you. But if Ryan Day and his coaches are letting these players believe that they're national championship favorites today, then I think that's a misstep. So I would hope that they're pounding in their heads that not only have they not won anything this season, but they lost their last 2 games and, played pretty embarrassing on December 29th. So that needs to be the biggest focus, like just getting better from the end of last year than as opposed to coming out and saying, oh, we're the national championship favorites.
Well, they probably will still say that they're the national championship favorites if you're saying it's natty or bust, but we'll get to that in a minute. But first, I want to have a little bit of fun. Let's take some guesses on, just the questions that these 4 Buckeyes are going to get. Let's start with Ryan Day. Bill, how many times he should be available for about 75 minutes, I think, counting the nonsense televised portion where no one wants to ask real questions on Big Ten Network, and then an hour after that. So how many times will he be asked about an NIL / all-star team put together this year?
I think he'll get asked about it at least once while he's on television, and then I'll say 3 other times when he's in his breakout session, and then also probably numerous times throughout the day, depending on what additional media opportunities he chooses to embrace on like the Radio Row stuff, or he'll be on Big Ten Network too. Like it's going to come up a lot. I would imagine it's the thing he gets asked about the most.
You don't think people are going to ask him about Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan the most, and how does he feel like he didn't? Does he feel like Jim Harbaugh escaped at the right moment?
I think if Michigan were also available on Tuesday, maybe a version of that would get asked, but they're not. I think we mentioned this before, but it really is. It's like the Ohio State show. It's Ohio State, Illinois, Northwestern, Purdue, Rutgers, and Wisconsin. So Luke Fickell and Wisconsin, I think, will draw some eyeballs, but it's the Ohio State show on Tuesday.
Oh, I was hoping you wouldn't tell me so I could continue to just be like surprised about, oh, Luke's here.
Sorry.
Because I don't care about anyone else who's there, and I don't on Wednesday or Thursday either.
Michigan is Thursday, I believe.
Schiano and Fickell.
Yeah.
What a day.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think Bill. I think someone is going to ask him that, Berm. Like, Michigan questions are unavoidable, and then Jim Harbaugh's not there, so someone's going to try and ask about that and try and revisit what happened with Connor Stallions. Like, I don't expect Ryan Day to answer it, which is why it may only happen exactly one time, but someone will try.
I do wonder with the different setup. This is a little inside baseball, I suppose, but usually there are Michigan media there to ask questions of Ryan Day and vice versa. And with a full day, like Ohio State's Tuesday, Michigan's Thursday, I wonder if that dynamic might disappear. I don't know that like Michigan media is going to be in town on Tuesday for Ohio State or not. My guess would be that they're not.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
So that'll be different.
Doesn't seem worth their travel expenses to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you have a number in mind for that, Berm?
No, I mean, but the fact that the Michigan media won't be there probably on Tuesday does negate that, because they would ask it from the sense of like, how glad are you that Jim Harbaugh's gone? Are you happy?
Do you know Sharon Moore? What do you think?
Do you even know Sharon? Are you happy?
Fair enough.
Barry Gibbs.
Are you happy?
Yeah,
there is
Michigan beat writer.
I don't know.
There is somebody who there's someone who shows
the Michigan talk show.
There's a person or two who shows up to Big Ten Media Days every single year who will ask a question about people's happiness and their upbringing.
Forgot about that guy.
So that "Are you happy?" is actually a thing that he'll be asked, I bet.
And he
actually
get angry about that.
Yeah, get mad about being happy. How many times, Berm, will Jack Sawyer curse during his 45-minute podium session?
3.
Yeah,
all S's. Is it gonna work an F in there, or all S's?
No. It'll be mostly A's.
Oh, A's.
Oh,
how they're busting their A's. How they're busting their A's, and how they got their A's kicked.
I almost don't count that.
I think he's gonna hit for the cycle, and then he's gonna say all of them.
Exactly once. George Carlin's full set.
I think that's a challenge. In fact, when I see him on Tuesday morning, I'm going to ask him to do it just to see if he can.
I'm here for that. I'd love that.
So Berm said 3. It's got to be over, don't you think, Bill?
Yeah, I'll say 5.
Yeah.
Especially if we're including A's, which I wouldn't, because that's 12-year-olds use that word. I think it's 5 at least.
But they shouldn't.
Yeah.
A's and H's, like that would push it into the 50s.
How many times will Brian Day be asked about the starting quarterback decision and how it gets made? Not 17, 18.
I actually wonder, because like we'll ask about it, because like as sort of like, well, somebody on the beat will ask about it for sure. But I wonder if like national media just like, no, Will Howard's quarterback, I don't need to ask about that.
I do think that is the national perspective.
Yeah.
So they won't. And
he is the starter on the video game by 5 whole points. I mean,
well, but it would counteract their entire narrative if Ohio State brought in an all-star portal edition at quarterback and then started Devin Brown. Like they can't believe that that's a possibility. That wouldn't make any sense for them.
This guy's getting fired up already.
It's a big week.
Not even there yet.
We're talking ball. No, that's a good question. I was gonna tee it up in a different way, which is if a certain veteran member of this beat will make it 2 years in a row, deciding to ask who Ryan Day's backup quarterback is, because Tim May already made that joke when I was on the radio with him last week.
Oh yeah.
Oh, if he's like trying out the jokes to see how they land, he'll definitely pull it out.
He's working on his set before he has to go up and do his full half hour. Yeah,
you have to workshop it. And
yeah,
we did that all morning.
He'll definitely do that. I wonder if you could go back in time to every Big Ten media days that Tim May has attended, how many times he's asked that question or a version of it. I bet it's 500.
Yeah,
it's a classic Tim May joke.
And he should ask it, I think, to every coach at Big Ten media days this week. Yeah. How many times in 45 minutes, Bill, will Denzel Burke say natty or bust?
6.
It's a good number.
Yeah.
Oh, that's way
6.
too many.
You don't think?
No, it's going to be like 2.
What if he like just eventually like morphs into Marshawn Lynch mode, and instead of answering questions, he just leans in and goes, natty or bust, like to any question, like for the last 10 minutes of his press conference. I'd respect that.
That would be great. Here's another bit of inside baseball for that. So everyone flocks to the head coaches, and then there tends to be some overlap where the 3 players are talking and they have crowds of like 5 or 6 people. And you also don't need to talk to players for 45 minutes at a time. It's too long. And by the end of it, you just get like random stragglers walking up. They're like, and they'll go up and say, "Hey, Denzel, I'm sure you've been asked this, and if you have, I'm sorry, but do you guys think that you're going to win a national championship this year?" And then that person will leave, and then another one will walk up and say, "Hey, Denzel, I'm sorry if you've been asked this, but I wasn't over here for the first part. Is this team? Did everybody come back with an eye on like winning the national championship?" And Denzel will say, "Yeah, it's down to your bust," and he'll say thank you, and then they'll walk away, and then the next person will come up and they'll say, "Hey, Denzel, I was just over there talking to Jack, and he was mentioning that like a bunch of the veterans on this team really want to win a national championship. Like, is that true? I'm sorry if you've been asked that." And Denzel will say, "Yeah, natty or bust," and that will go on. I'll continue the bit for like 10 more minutes if you want, but that's the idea. And that'll happen, I think, 15 times for Denzel.
I like the notion that it is unusual that players want to win a national championship.
But it's laughable if someone at Rutgers says it. Like,
I mean, but they still want to. Like, they may not return to school with that in mind, but they still want to. Like,
okay, but if they said natty or bust, like that's a lot of bust.
You should go up to Greg Schiano and say like, "Hey, Greg, sorry if you've been asked this, but is it Meineke Car Care Bowl or bust for you guys this year?"
Pinstripe Bowl. They got to get that home field.
You carry that momentum in from the postseason last year, just destroying Miami. How much does that help your program? And would you like to go one step further and play in the pinstripe? I think that's the one. All right. Any other prop bets you want to throw out? Those are all I have.
People should ask Rutgers players. They've dropped. They're like 19th in the country now in their class rating. So I was going to say, like, they have a top 10 class a month ago. Now they're 19. Curious.
That sounds like a job for you.
Curious how they feel. What they're doing, different. But
do you guys think that the players are gonna get asked about JT not being in the video game?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too.
I think that there will be more questions asked about what it's like using yourself in the video game than there will be about Natty or Bust.
That's going to be the theme. You're absolutely right, partner. No drawing logos or any of the other silly stuff from the past. Now it's going to be video game questions. Gosh, I wish you hadn't given me that realization a day before we arrive in Indianapolis, because now I have to dread it.
Sorry. I'm going to walk around with actually a TV and a PlayStation at every podium and just have a guy play as himself for 5 minutes.
It's hard to say it, right? I can't be the only one who makes that mistake. Glad you did. All right. Hey, lots of smiles, lots of good vibes around here because we're going to Indianapolis and Big Ten Media Days are here. We're going to be at Roosters later on Monday. And just when I said that we were done with mailbags, we've got another version of that because Road Breaks brought to you by Card Collector 2 will be back at some point on Monday night. I don't know, hopefully around 7 and done by 8. That's going to be the goal. I don't know why. I'm just picking that as a projected window to try and knock that out. I bet we'll have some Daredevil beers and pizza before that. It's all happening, baby. The season is here, kind of, at least for us. And I couldn't be more excited to have you all along with us on this ride on the podcast daily. For Bill and Burm, I'm Austin. We'll talk to you later on today.